Hey everyone, welcome back to AWS Connections. This is our second episode of the show. I'm back. I'm with Michael Palermo. My name is Nick Raboy, and I'm a lead developer evangelist at Here. And like I said, Michael Palermo is on my right. You want to introduce yourself again, Michael?
Yes, you've said my name several times. Michael Palermo, also with the evangelism team. Great to be back for our second episode here of AWS Connections. And I have to say, I'm really excited about what we're going to be doing today. It's going to be a fun episode.
Yes, it is. Joining us also, we also have a special guest on the show who helped us with a lot of the content here. His name is Wan Lee Chang. He's in our Seattle office, and I do want to give him a chance to introduce himself because he'll be helping along with everything that we do as well. There he is. How's it going, Wan Lee?
Good, how are you? So hello everyone. So my name is Wan Lee Cheng. I'm a lead machine learning engineer at Here Research. I'm based in Seattle, so I'm part of the Seattle lab.
And what exactly are you working on over there at the Seattle lab?
So we work with a large variety of data sets, including like satellite imagery, street level imagery, LiDAR data, and also we work with like trader data as well. So basically we create deep learning models as well as traditional machine learning models to extract information from those data sources, and then we put them to use. That's basically what we do here.
That's pretty awesome. So you're going to actually be helping a lot in the moderation of this particular episode on Twitch, right?
Yeah, so I'll be online for answering any questions, and thanks for having me here.
Yeah, we definitely appreciate the contributions to the actual content that me and Michael are going to be doing on this particular episode. So thanks for helping us out.
Yep, thank you.
And then likewise, yep, there's Michael again. We do have Peter. He's helping out in the background. He's doing all of our infrastructure and setup. I don't know if he's going to appear in a little box at the top. He did last time, but if not, that's all right. So before we get into the actual core content of this episode, I want to do a little bit of housekeeping. So first of all, we are going to be very active in the chat. So if any time in the episode you do have a question, please. Oh, I hear stuff in the background. So please go ahead and add it to the chat. We will answer it. We also do have a bot which will allow us to share useful links to you. So, for example, do you have any shameless plugs right now, Michael?
Yeah, so I'm excited that several things, or a couple things, I should say. Next week, I'll be in Seattle, so I'll get to visit the folks there. I've been invited by Amazon to do a webinar with them, and it is going to be on using location terms with Alexa. So that's going to be really fun. That webinar again is next week, and we'll provide the details in the chat. Also, I am going to be part of a Seattle meetup. So that's exciting. The details will also be in the chat area with regard to that. And that's going to be kind of a repeat of episode 1 of what we did. It's going to be for those that are interested in really embracing location with Amazon Lex. So I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, and likewise, I'll be giving a meetup as well. Same topic material. I'll be in Chicago in 2 weeks doing the same thing. So if you maybe had some questions on that particular live stream that we did, maybe you're too afraid to ask, or maybe you didn't think of them at the time, bring them to these meetups. Ask us live at those meetups. Put us on the spot. So with that kind of housekeeping stuff out of the way, what are we talking about in this particular episode, Michael?
So I am really excited. By the way, I have to mention, let's definitely give a round of applause to Wan Lee, who introduced himself and will be moderating, because he is definitely the brains behind most of the content that we're going to be sharing today. And so I want to give him the proper kudos because he is an expert here at Sagemaker. So it's been a wonderful learning journey for me. And I know we've talked about this before, where it's so fun in evangelism to be part of exploring new technologies. And so I've been able to dabble with Sagemaker and see how our location APIs interact with, Sagemaker and machine learning. But I thought what would be good to do, Nick, is instead of doing a whole bunch of fluff up front, so to speak, with regard to what it is. I want to get straight into it because there's going to be some opportunities when we might have to wait a little bit for some processes to complete where I can fill in at that point. So you good with that?
Yeah, I'm good with that. Let's do it.
All right. Well, let me show you now our screen where I have, some like notes that I want to share. So let's make that happen, Peter. Where is my screen? Must see it.
Yep, the guy behind the curtains. I think he's asleep.
Yeah.
No, he does a good job.
We're trying to be exciting, keep him motivated. Okay, so on the screen, I just want to highlight there's some prerequisites that we're going to be doing. I mean, these prerequisites essentially are saying before we even get to SageMaker and even talk about what it's doing, we're going to take care of some housekeeping to make sure we have a lot of data ready to go when it's on demand. So the first thing I'd like to do is just talk about the fact that, of course, we're going to need to have a developer account. And if anyone is curious, once you sign up, when you click this Get Started for free and fill it out, you'll notice that once that process is done, your name appears in this upper corner. I'm going to click here. I'm going to go to my projects. And by doing this, even if you've just started, you're like, well, what project could I have possibly had right away? Well, the project is going to be this freemium project name, more than likely because you probably didn't rename it. But this is where I get my app ID and app code. And just to show what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy these links here, and I'm going to paste them strategically into this area that will get used a little later. So it's my clipboard of the things that I'm going to be doing. And I also want to get my app code over here. So I'm going to grab that and also paste it into this clipboard. So I have my app code and app ID ready to go.
And in case somebody's a first-time watcher of this particular show, they can get started with a free account, right, Michael?
That's correct. In fact, when you saw that project name, even saying freemium, I'm also using the same thing. I'm not using some special internal thing. I'm using our freemium, get started for free. I like that plan, up to 250,000 transactions a month for free. So happy to be using that.
No credit card required.
No credit card required. Very important. So I also have as a little note to myself that I'm going to need something called an access token and a space ID. Well, this is going to be coming from XYZ Studio. So I'm going to take this link right here to Swagger, and I'm sure that'll be made available also into the chat room area. I'm going to post it in here and hit enter. And what this is doing is, Nick, we're going to be using XYZ as a front end to visualize what we're going to be doing with SageMaker.
Sure.
And in order to just quickly create a space where we can store data from our SageMaker experience, I'm going to go to this Edit Spaces area, and I'm going to create a space. Now, it should be noted, I have already logged in to XYZ using the same credentials I did when I logged into my developer account. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And there's other ways to work with XYZ beyond this Swagger portal, right, Michael?
Absolutely. In fact, I even have it open right here. I have this option to just say, create new XYZ space. Does that intrigue you that I have that button there?
Maybe.
You might even wonder why I just don't click that button and I'm doing it the other way.
Yeah,
Let
that's odd.
me show you, Nick. Let me explain. If I click that, in this example, it actually wants to have me create a starter file, right?
Sure.
So I could have provided one, but I'm just going to cancel out of there and say, no, I'll just create one here through the API. And I'm just going to create a blank one. So that's why I'm using this approach. So I'm going to click in this area, and it gives me this ability to try it out.
And there's also a CLI, right?
There is, yes. Yeah. I could have done it there too, but it's so much more fun to do this visually.
It is. Yeah, visual is always fun.
So you know what, Nick? I would like you didn't know I was going to do this to you, but you're going to give me the name of what we're going to call this data storage place in our XYZ data hub. What's it going to be?
It's called the North.
The North?
Yeah.
Okay. And then as far as the description, I'll take care of that because I'm scared of what you would say. I'm just gonna go ahead and say sample data for SageMaker stuff, because we're making this real simple. So we ready to execute?
Do it.
Okay, so when I execute, it tells me yes, everything worked out great. It's letting me know it's there. But also, if I go over to XYZ Studio and I do a refresh of this page, now we could see the North has appeared, because we just used that API. So I've created an area, Nick, that I can now store data. There is yet another thing up here. I would probably tell everyone watching, we never know what might happen during demos. So just in case something goes south, see, I got a pun out of this. In case something goes south, I can now go to something that's already been built. But I'd like to do all of this from scratch. So using the North, I need to do the next thing that was in my task. And that is I need to create an authorization token for that space so I can access it. So that using this API here, which this is my token URL. I'm going to go to that screen. I'm going to refresh it so it'll now show the space. The North appears. So you notice this area right here, Nick, this little funny ID, that is our space ID. And if I remember correctly, when I go to my notes, I have a spot for that. So I'm going to put that in there. Now I'm also going to go into the generate token. I'll click all, but I'm just going to uncheck manage space. In other words, I wanted to do basic CRUD. But how would you describe CRUD, Nick? What does that mean to you?
Create, retrieve, update, and delete.
Sounds good enough to me. So I'm going to go ahead and generate that token. And I don't need to provide a description or anything. I'll just leave everything as is and generate that token. And then now I get to copy that token right here and go back over into my notes and say, okay, now I have my access token. So what we've done so far is I knew that at some point SageMaker is going to request all of this data, how to access our APIs, how to access the data that we're going to store in XYZ. I have all of that done. That takes me to this next part where I can explain we're going to be using Twitter data in this SageMaker experience that we're having. Now, I already have a curl command set up, but I'd like to explain, first of all, if you're interested at some point doing something similar to what we're doing, you would need to get a developer account at Twitter. So I do have one. I'm actually logged in right now with my developer account. I'm going to be using their Search Tweets API. And have you ever used it before?
Long time ago. So I could definitely use a refresher.
Okay. Well, it does require you when you are using the Twitter API after you've signed up, once you want to get the proper tokens in order to communicate with the Twitter API, you have to create an app. So create an app within, like, the metadata of an app within the Twitter profile. It's kind of similar to how we have projects with our here developer account, that it's all of our token stuff is kind of associated with that. So
yeah,
I have already done that work. So I'm not going to get into all the basics of getting set up with Twitter. Just know that I have done it. And then now in my search Twitter, so this is the home page, I'm going to show you that I have right here a filter images with a smiley face. So in other words, what this part does here, I'm just kind of highlighting it. It's saying, hey, only show me tweets that have images in it, and then also show me tweets that have a smiley face. So I'll say a smiley face somewhere. You following me so far on that?
I am.
Okay. Well, going back over to my cheater right here, I'm going to take that curl command that I have. I'm going to copy it. And I'm going to open up my console. And I'm going to go ahead and paste it in there and execute it. So you could see that's all the JSON data that I got back. And I'm going to collect every bit of it. So I've got my finger on the shift key and I have that copied. I'm going to go Control C. So, I have that. And then over here in my tweets JSON, I'm just going to erase whatever's in there. So Control A, backspace, and now Control V. These are just the Windows commands.
So just to confirm, you just did a curl request to strictly the Twitter API. There was no SageMaker involved. There was no here involved. Just simple Twitter API, right?
Just a pure raw Twitter API call. I even asked for a count of 100 of them just to get a good sampling. So you are absolutely right. And now that I have that, I have it in a JSON format. I have it in a file, and now it's ready to go.
Sure. And people can read more about the Twitter API on their own, right?
That's correct. Right. So again, this isn't so much about how to use Twitter, but we are identifying them as the source of data for what we're going to be doing.
Sure.
Okay. So now that leads us to kind of a segue to the SageMaker stuff. I would like to introduce that we did release a tutorial very recently. The link should be in our chat soon. This is the blog that announced our, enriching location data with SageMaker. And what I want to do is just talk about this little model that you see on the screen. The tutorial that we released is not what we're going to be doing in this live stream. That's not what we're doing. This tutorial is focused more on the fetch phase, because with machine learning, there's different phases: generating the data, training the model, and then deploying the model and using it. Well, this tutorial, for those who are interested, goes into this fetch phase. So how could you use our APIs when you're generating example data? That's a cool thing to know how to do. But we're going to be focusing more on the deployment of a model and actually using the model in this live stream.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
Okay. And if anyone has questions, remember Wan Lee lurks behind the scenes and can answer some of your SageMaker type questions regarding that.
Yeah, Wan Lee is in the comments. And just to reiterate, if you do have any questions, don't be afraid to ask. We'll pick it up and Michael will respond if appropriate.
Okay, sounds good. So now I'm going to go to the Amazon console. So when I had my little list up, that's by going to this console.aws.amazon.com. Once I went there, I selected SageMaker, and that's what this is. I'm in the SageMaker area. And you'll notice that notebook instances is what's been selected on the left side of the screen. And I do have one already created. However, I would like to create one from scratch. What do you think?
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to create that notebook instance, and we're going to give it a name. I'm just going to give this the name of, boy, I don't want that to take long. Let's see. Demo SageMaker. I think that'll be simple enough.
That works.
And I'm just going to choose a little bit more compute power. Probably, I think I had this one.
So I don't know too much about the computing power of each of these machines. Is that absolutely necessary to have one of that power? Can it be
so
less?
It's not. No, I could have started with the minimum one that was already there.
All right.
I'm just choosing this one because I'd like the demo to have a little bit of a kick to it.
Sure.
But it is something that's worth mentioning right now, Nick, and that is, when you are logged in and you're doing this, this does represent a cost, right? This is not a free thing.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Make sure that, you could choose the best, but you're going to pay for it, right? So, just use that as a guideline, not to choose something too high unless you can pay for it.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, because I'm not too familiar with SageMaker, you're definitely more experienced. When you create one of these instances, is it built for uptime or is it built by usage, kind of like Lambda is?
So you are asking a great question that I don't even know all the basics of.
Problem.
I mean, great putting me on the spot like that. Awesome. But I really don't know. I mean, that might be something that Wan Lee knows. So ask in the chat area.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also, with regard to permissions and encryption, I'm just choosing the default. However, if you were doing this for the first time, you might have to create a new role. And if that's the case, you just accept all the defaults, except you don't need an S3 bucket. And so you'll know what that means if you're creating a new one. But I'm just going to leave with the one that I already have in existence. And I'm going to create this notebook instance.
Juan Lee says it's billed by the hour.
Billed by the hour. Wow. So you'll notice that, see up there, that little green message that's saying, hey, success.
I do, I see
notebook
it.
instance is being created. That's very exciting. So, but it really means exactly what it's saying. It's being created. It's not something that happens instantaneously.
Sure.
So this is one of those areas where I can talk about what we're going to be doing.
Awesome.
Because this might take a little while. So Nick, the goal of this live stream is we're capturing all those tweets that have images with them. And what we would like to do is an analysis of those images. Literally analyze the images and see if we can detect objects in those images. Objects like maybe a bird, cat, dog, a person. Are you with me so far?
Yeah, are these objects going to be categorized to that level of detail, or is it just going to differentiate whether something is different from something else?
It is going to be, for each thing it identifies, it is going to tag it. So it is
Sure.
possible that one image could have multiple things in it, right?
Sure.
So that's one of the things we're going to do.
Well, actually, let me rephrase this. Is it going to say an image has a bird, a ball, and a fire hydrant? If we say only birds, is it going to classify the other two as objects as well, or only birds?
Great question. So the answer is we didn't put any filters in this demo,
Sure.
but you could have.
Sure.
You could
All right.
have. Or it might even be interesting to note that, or you may want to do that filtration after the fact. Maybe you want all the data and it's going to be on the front end where you're going to do that filtering.
Got it.
And you can also do another level of filtering. That would be perhaps you only want to see the images that have 2 people or less in it.
Got
So
it.
that would be another thing that we could accomplish with what we're doing here. But
Makes
wait,
sense.
there's more, right? So yes, we're going to be detecting those things in those images, but of course we work at here. And what do? We are obsessed about location. So we also want to go through the process of identifying, if available, the location of these tweets and pin them on a map and put that location data or the metadata about it right there on the map. So you see where we're going with this?
I do.
Okay. Well, check it out. We are now in service for our demo SageMaker. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up Jupyter. So what I mean by that is I'm going to open this notebook instance up. So it's redirecting me. And I'm going to open up a terminal that is for this context of this notebook. And with that terminal open, going back over to my notes, again, I am going to cheat. I'm going to copy these things right here that are, and I'll talk about it before I do it. Essentially, it's going to clone from GitHub a trained model, a model that's already been trained. Remember, I said in that circle, talking about SageMaker process, there's the training of a model and then the use of it. So
Yeah.
we're going to be using a model that's already been trained.
Got
and
it.
we're getting it from an open source area. And this is the thing that does the image detection, the understanding of what's inside those images. So any thoughts on that before I go to the next part?
How big do you know how big this model is?
I don't remember. But I think we might see that data in the next when we actually take care of it. So
All
let
right,
me
yeah, let's check it out.
go over here. I'm now going to paste inside of this, and it's going to run that process right now. So we might see that data pop up here or in the final screen that we're going to be seeing. So what it's doing is that model also had some dependency. So we're making sure all those libraries are also in that as this
Sure.
is, working itself through. This is exciting stuff, that we get to use one that's already been trained. So there are the brilliant people such as Juan Lee.
Michael, we're getting a
Yes,
request to actually zoom in on your screen, this particular screen. The
really.
text is a little small.
It's not letting me. But you know what? Nothing's really executable here. Like this
Sure.
is just a process running in the
So
background.
they already saw the commands on the previous window that you had open, right?
Yeah, so I can open that up actually right now.
Yeah.
So those commands were that's the real important piece right
Yeah.
there. Glad you called that out. So hopefully, again, each one of those gets executed, and we're just making sure that we have everything we need for the very next step. I'll just check to see if it's done yet. So it is. It's done. I can actually close this tab because this terminal process is done. And you'll now see that I have this trained model ready to go. But I'm going to need more than this. I'm also going to need code that's going to know how to process or call upon that trained model. So for that to happen, I am introducing now this Sagemaker demo that I'm going to drag and drop right into this area. Now, not out here where it says copy, but up here where it says move. That's really important.
Sure.
Okay, so I'm putting it here in the move area. It's saying go ahead, upload.
What is
And
this what is this IP YMB file format? Is that something special?
It's something that you would ask Juan Lee.
Juan Lee, that's a question for you, buddy.
Yeah, so he's asking what that extension means. To me, this is a notebook instance.
Yeah.
But I want to make sure that he responds to that.
Sure. Just wondering if it's like
Technically.
I assume it's maybe like YAML configuration or something, but I could be totally wrong.
I don't know.
It's just very large.
Asking lots of really cool questions that are great for Juan Lee.
8 megabytes. That seems pretty big.
Yeah. Okay. By the way, I want to also drag something else over into this area. Going back over to this screen, remember all the tweets that we got? This tweets JSON was the result of that Twitter curl. I am going to bring up that tweets, which is this here, and also drag it right up into this area and make this available for use within here. So tweets.json file is in here as well.
Got it. And again, that's at the root of the project, right?
It's at the root of the project. It's the result set that we got when we executed that curl command for our tweets.
And you said there's what, 100 of them in there? 100 tweets?
There is about 100 tweets in there. That doesn't necessarily mean we're going to get 100 results, and I'll explain in a little bit. But yes, there's at least a sampling there.
And just to do a time check, Mike, we're at the 30-minute marker, just so that way you're aware.
Groovy. Thank you. I am going to open up this notebook instance. Where this code is, and I'll zoom in. So should be able to see, that's probably good right there.
Yeah.
You see these fill in the blanks?
I do.
Does it look familiar to you?
Does look very familiar.
Yes. So I'm going to go back to my notes and say, okay, I already grabbed all that. That was part of our home, the preparing for this demo. I'm going to create, copy this and instantly go right back over here and paste it in to this spot. Now I'm going to do something interesting, Nick. I'm not going to talk about everything right now. I'm actually going to just execute this thing because it might take a little while to execute.
Yeah. Because we're dealing with image data, right? So it's got to scan them.
So it's got to do its analysis. So I'm going to just actually do this restart and run all. And it'll be like, well, you never started it. But I'm just going to click that anyway. It's just going to be an opportunity for me to make sure we're starting with a clean slate, and it's going to start running through all of these things, which I can now talk about.
Sure.
So for example, we've set up our initializing data. That's what this block is for. This block right here is what's going to bring in that trained model, that ability for us to use something that's already been built to do the image detection. So again, consider this I've set a reference to this model as like a library for processing, and it's doing its initialization of that and making that available for us to use right in here. And these are the class names. Remember, we were talking about how we might identify the various things that would be in the image?
Yeah.
So, banana, laptop, there's a variety of things in here, but all the things you see in here are the potential things that we're trying to do a detection on in these images.
So if something like wristwatch appears in an image, is it going to select it as an object, or is it going to ignore it, do you think?
Yeah,
Because
well,
it's not
first
on
of
this
all, I
list.
don't know if wristwatch is in this list.
I'm
Are you
gonna
seeing it?
I don't see it. I'm going to assume it's not there. So if
Okay.
it's not there, what happens?
Well, it's not looking for it, so it won't be classified. It's
Got it.
actually just looking specifically for these things.
Got it. So that answers my previous question then from a while back,
Which was what?
which is what happens if we're only looking for a specific object? Does it do anything with the other objects it might find, or is it just looking for anything that it thinks is an object of any kind and
I see.
calls that out?
So it's not that all powerful, but I thought
Got
you
it.
meant in the context if it found a frisbee, a backpack,
Yeah.
and a truck, it will identify all of those. But you can filter the things that you care about either before or after the process.
Sure.
Okay. This next phase in here, these are the methods. Wanli developed these methods using our API.
Can you highlight so that way we know what you're referring to?
Of course. Thanks for the reminder there. So in that particular example, we're saying, hey, we might need to get some information about a location, a named location, whether that's like a city name or whatever, and we're going to need to get its latitude and longitude. So that's what this one is doing. This function here says, hey, we need to put data, store it into our XYZ data hub. So that's what that function does. And so I want to show you where they're going to get used.
Yeah.
You ready?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
So for me, this is kind of the heart of it.
Sure.
Because what we're doing is this for statement is saying for each one of those tweets, we're going to check a few things. We're going to check to see, does that tweet have coordinates already based with it? Because or maybe you don't know, users have the option to add geolocation data to their tweets.
Yep.
Right? So if they do, we will recognize, oh, we already have coordinates. And then we're going to even use this special metadata property that Wanli created called geosource. And we're going to say, we're going to recognize that it really was from the tweet that we got that. But this is where we're adding a value add to this whole experience, because if they don't provide the geo coordinates directly, we're going to check to see if a place was associated with the tweet. So it is possible to have a named place associated with the tweet, even if we don't have its coordinates. If that's the case, we're going to call that function that uses our API to establish what that place is in terms of latitude and longitude. You with me so far?
I am.
Okay. Finally, what if the tweet has nothing location-based at all? We've resolved in our business logic that let's see if their Twitter profile at least has a location based with it. And if it does, then we'll use it. Again, giving the attribution to here. So if you ever see tweet as metadata, that means we already have the geolocation. Otherwise, we had to use our APIs to enrich that data.
So question then, just to clear things up. So as far as I know, we don't have a Python SDK. The get geometry from geocoder, is that a function somewhere else in your code?
That's the one that we looked up here.
Got it. All right. Just
right.
making sure.
So this is the predefined function. And as you can see, it's just calling our RESTful API.
Got it.
Using our app ID and app code that we provided at the very top.
Makes sense.
All right. So once it's all done, basically all this is doing is just providing the metadata that we'll need in order to do the proper categorization of what's inside of those images. And then ultimately, this line here says, let's get that put into our XYZ data hub. All right. Do you notice this comment here?
Yes.
So this is something that's kind of interesting. And when Wanli and I were working this process through, it's like sometimes people, the location of a person in their profile, it can be whatever they call it. They could put the moon there. They could put some kind of fantasy land there. It doesn't have to be a real place. Are you
Sure.
with me?
Yeah.
So if we ran our API against something and it returned like we don't know what this is, then that's when you're getting these kind of messages that appear.
Because people can add to their profile something like the internet, right? Or
Yeah,
cyberwebs.
or the Milky Way galaxy, or
I've seen that a few times.
Okay, so you know this well then. Now
Yeah,
this is
sure.
example data that's coming up that shows that it sees what it thinks is a sports ball here,
Yes.
and then a person here. That might be hard to see but there are some little indications of what's in these images. But I'm going to show you an easier way to do that in a moment. I'm going to scroll all the way down. This is all the sample data that happened, and I'm just getting. Oops.
Might want to scroll away. Keep
Here,
it
let me just click that
safe for
link.
work.
We are using live data. Live data. So if I were to click on something, on the map somewhere, so this looks like it's close to Chicago somewhere.
Sure.
Then what I can find out so this is the data that had location data and an image in it. So if I expand my object array, I'm going to find that there's objects, class names that are in here, person, car, things like that. And I can also click on the media or the image to determine or see, make that correlation myself.
People in the chat are asking if you've been running it with a not safe for work filter in regards to the images that came up.
It's a great question. You know what? I did not even think, sadly, to even include that into what they're talking about here is this filter images. When I'm doing the actual API call, to put something on there that would make sure is there no, how to make it a safe search or whatever the case is. So
I just figured to do that by default, but maybe I'm wrong.
well, you know what? And honestly, I didn't even see that as an option, I think, when I was going through, but that's a great question that someone asked. If someone knows the answer, they can certainly tell me what that, what that extra little API tweak is.
Sure.
But going back over to, I believe it was here, I just want to call out also that what we did is we took all that data, we put it into XYZ, and then we sent a URL across into this GeoJSON tools URL. So we could get a visualization of what's in here by just passing the URL to our XYZ API hub. So again, a little hard to see in the address bar, but that's how we're seeing this data visually, because it is truly stored right now in our hub. In fact, if I go here to my hub and click on the north, what I'm going to see is the data that it provided in here. So I could see the geo source. And in fact, you'll notice this geo source that we see here, not one of the tweets was actually using geolocation coordinates. So we had to do API calls for each one of them. And I think that's important to note, because that was the value add of putting this in the process, is saying, if you don't have something that's explicit, you can provide it by adding our API and making sure that it gets handled. So I think with the time that we have there, I'll just kind of leave it on this screen. And are there any questions that were in the chat other than calling me out for not seeing a no safe filter?
So while the questions come in, so I can see where this would be valuable. Like I imagine that if you wanted to create like a heat map of certain maybe social media activity, you could easily do that, right?
Absolutely. In fact, all we're doing is something so simple where we're just clicking on something and we're saying, hey, if you want to see what's actually inside of this image, even without opening the image, which at this point is probably a good idea not to open any images, but I could at least see there's a person and a bottle in
Yeah.
what it perceives as in this image. Not going to open it just in
Wait.
case.
So it is there truly 2 bottles and 4 people, or is
That's a
it?
great question. In this example, it identified 4 people and 2 bottles. That's
Got
correct.
it.
Yes. Now, okay.
That was
Uh,
the
let's
ghost.
see. Okay. So this is a good example of something. So it thought it saw bottles, right? But I don't really see any bottles.
It could be the lights are creating maybe a bottle effect.
It looks like a bottle. And in fact, that's exactly what I was about to say. While this process is fun, it is subjective to some extent, meaning that there are some things where it's not like a 100% science, but it does capture, it usually does a pretty good job with people too. Again, I'd have to go back into the
Yeah.
SageMaker instance and look at those categorizations to see why it thought
Yeah.
certain things the way that
So
it did.
so if it had more training data, maybe would it be able to do a better job?
So this is one of those things that I think Juan Lee would probably answer this better, but he can correct me if I'm wrong. But an open source project like that, I'm sure that there is always something that's being contributed to it, because remember, we're not part of the training process. We're just using their pre-built model itself.
Yeah.
So we would probably be looking to them to enhance that particular model
Sure.
for improvements. Other than that, I think I'm just going to leave it as like at this page right here, going back home to this home screen. Because that pretty much wraps up the demo section. I mean, if we're going to recap, it's really about once you have a trained model and you provide all that data and
Yeah.
you execute that SageMaker, then instantly see it inside of XYZ Hub. I mean,
Sure.
it's a great way to kind of get started in understanding how it can go through that whole process. Because let's face it, a lot of our development stuff right now is actually connecting dots, and there was a lot of things that we had to connect here in order to make this work. And I'll leave it at that.
Juan Lee is saying that if you provide more training data, you could probably improve the accuracy.
Okay, very good.
So yeah, is that all, Michael?
I really think that's it. I mean, do you have any closing comments
Yeah, I
that you
do.
want to
So, I mean,
provide?
yeah, definitely. So this episode, while it was live here, it'll be available as a past broadcast on Twitch in about a week. Likewise, it'll probably be on our YouTube channel by then as well. If you have any questions and you want to get a hold of us or just communicate with other here developers, you can join our Slack channel. So it's already in the chat. Nightbot has it there. Join our Slack channel. Get involved with our community. We have a Twitter handle. Follow us on Twitter at HereDev. And I think, do we have another episode coming up, Michael, on AWS connections in the pipeline?
We have something brewing, but we don't have an official date yet.
Not an official date. That's fine. As the date becomes official, we'll definitely share it on our social media channels.
Sounds good.
So yeah, follow our channel so that way you do get notifications about this kind of stuff. The channel on Twitch, I mean. Thanks for joining our show. If you have any other further comments, Michael, definitely speak
I'm
now.
good. I glad to share that experience, and thanks once again to Juan Lee.
Yep.
Hey, hey, Michael. Do you want to do just like a little more demo of the images on the map?
I'm scared.
I can hide your screen if you tell me before you click on the image, and then if it's safe, I can reveal it. Does that sound good?
I mean, we can explore a couple. Sure.
We got Peter appearing in the corner now.
Yeah,
I
I had
know.
to pop in. Okay, hide the
So
screen.
we have an object. I'll go ahead and click here, see what it is. Oh, we saw that
That's
one
the
already.
same one.
I feel like we're playing like chat roulette here,
I know.
Test,
This one is from Egypt.
testing our luck.
Okay.
Okay, what was it?
Yeah, what did it detect there?
Let's see.
Here, I'll reveal it. It was safe.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So the object.
We may click on it
was
again
showing-
because it wasn't displayed on the Twitch.
Yeah, I'm going to display. Actually, it didn't show. It didn't classify that particular one.
Really, a boat.
There is one. The second one here says boat.
Hold on. Okay, go for it.
Let's see.
So,
Okay.
yeah, it did find a boat in the background. This is the manual hard version of Safe Search.
Yeah, this is
So,
Michael Hirsch
let-
said,
let's see.
"I am your NSFW filter."
This one says it didn't have a classification. So let me try to find another one. I know that did we try the one here in Australia?
I don't think so.
Don't think so. So let's see.
Yeah, I don't know.
Object.
I'm a little worried with
Yeah, that one
the
says-
text on that one.
Already. Okay. Then we'll ignore that one. Let's go to Mexico.
I
And
have
class name
skepticism
here.
about this too.
it just says person. So
Hold
you
on.
might want to.
Okay, test it.
Okay.
All right.
Okay,
Fair enough.
it's a person.
Got a person. Very good.
All right.
Thank you. Thank
I'll
you
leave.
for allowing this demo to have a little bit more life to it.
I figured
Appreciate
it. You wanted to show a little bit more than just one image.
Yeah.
Sure. But I think
Right.
everyone gets the idea.
All right,
And of course,
I'm
all
fading back.
that data is also over here on this side to look at all the way down to. So whether you do it this way or this way, you have it available.
All right. Is that everything, Michael?
Yeah, that's good.
All right. Thanks everyone for coming out to join this episode.
Thank you.